Harry yawned as he descended the stairs. It was early on Saturday afternoon that was. Turning right, he headed towards the kitchen in search of liquid refreshment and, having both put on the kettle for a cup of tea and filling a glass with water for while the kettle boiled, he sat down on the ancient pine carver chairs which had belonged to a member of Hermione's family. Savoring the clear, cool liquid, Harry smiled. It wouldn't be too many hours before Hermione got up, having gone to bed after an early shift. Not that she needed to do it. She was only a junior minister after all, and compulsory duties were not part of her remit. But Hermione was career-minded. She knew that by volunteering for these kinds of jobs, the trip to Strasbourg included, meant she would be seen by the right people and she could climb the ladder sooner. It also meant Hermione was paid for the shifts she had done, and this, of course, would be going straight into their wedding fund. Harry smiled as he drained his glass, tried not to scrape his chair on the terracotta tiles of the floor as he saw to the kettle and his tea, and wondered whether he should wait for her to get up before offering her food or if he should make tea for them both as a surprise. The latter, Harry decided as he thought about his fiancée asleep in their bed, her hair spilling over the pillow as she turned in her sleep. Harry had watched her for a good quarter of an hour when he'd woken, gawping at the time and wondering whether inviting Ron over when Hermione was out had been the best move he could make. They'd watched international Quidditch into the early hours, and deciding that he would make the effort to get to bed earlier, even though it was a weekend. A thought struck him. How had he become so boring? If he'd mentioned a bedtime to Ron, he would have ribbed him royally. Reaching into the bread bin, his hand rested on the last 2 slices of wholemeal bread. Enough for toast, and he could leave a note for Hermione and go shopping. Almond risotto? Harry knew she liked it. Or perhaps an Italian dish? Harry smiled as the toast browned under the grill. He'd become boring, at least in Ron's eyes, when he'd proposed to Hermione. Domesticated. But that was what it would be like when they were married. Ron was still single, and was still living his life as if he was a teenager. Extracting the toast from the grill, Harry bent down to the fridge and fished out the margarine, then a knife from the drawer. He would never have pointed this out to Ron though. That's what came with lack of commitment, and Harry was happy, more than happy in fact, with the responsibilities he had chosen. Like his parents, he wanted to be together with Hermione forever, despite their outlooks on career. Harry carried his tea and toast back to the table. He sank his teeth into it, the margarine having melted and dripping onto his pajamas. Harry didn't care. He would change, shower and go shopping. And pick up a bottle of iced martini, Hermione's favorite drink. No, not despite. He didn't understand her thirst for promotion, it was true, nor her dedication to her career in politics, and Hermione didn't understand how he could be satisfied with his job either. But the point was, they both valued each other's view on their jobs and accounted for that. Harry grinned, thinking of his parents again. How had he grown so like them? His domestication had not stretched to some of the jobs that Hermione had been asking him to do over the summer holidays, though. Harry was halfway through his first week of holiday. The reference library always closed in the summer, especially when there weren't many incoming documents to classify and organize, and he realized that he really should. Hermione worked so hard, and Harry knew that she felt as if she were nagging if she had to mention the jobs more than once, and now, having finished the early shifts for the week, and Sunday being ahead of them, it was inevitable that the tasks not done would prey on her mind. Perhaps not organize dinner then, Harry thought. He could go to the DIY shop tomorrow with her and they could discuss together what was needed so he could redecorate their bedroom. And on Monday he would do the extra jobs, the drains, cleaning the windows and the car, go through the boxes in the loft of everything, and he meant everything, his parents had given to him when he had left home, and decide what needed to be kept and what didn't. Tuesday would be the day for that. Perhaps after that he could unpack the rest of the cases which had just been thrown under the stairs and the souvenirs, foreign currency, leaflets and so on where they had been when they had packed their things from Hermione's work holiday nearly 3 weeks ago. Do something with the books which had inadvertently made their way with them to France with some of the papers, throw them away, perhaps. Now, with some time between their delivery and now, the mystery of their origin and purpose were long gone. It must have been someone like Sam, playing a trick. Harry had long concluded, wondering why he had ever taken the diary and notes so seriously. Perhaps he should have tried some spells in them, find out who it was and play a trick on them. He could look at doing that on Thursday. That was enough. Hermione understood he needed to have some time off from work, and he had spent some of it in the National Archives that week and the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, indulging his passions for old documents, history and art. He could never explain it to anyone who asked, but, like his mother, he felt at home with history. He felt he could reach into the past and connect with it. Harry knew that's what Hermione felt about politics too, like she could achieve something worthwhile. How that translated into a call from the ministry saying that the unchecked conjurists required a higher-than-average presence and, to prevent too many people's ideas getting out of hand, catalyzed by fermented pumpkin juice and threatening to blast their neighbors into the middle of next week, Harry didn't quite understand. But as Hermione explained it, and the shifts she would do, Harry knew he didn't want to stand in her way, regardless of how much he'd miss her, especially during his own holiday. And besides, who would worry about her birthday and pretend not to be bothered about it but really had organized a simple surprise for Hermione's birthday in a month? Not that it was much, a romantic picnic would be better. Not that he had much money, anything spare was being kept for their wedding in May. But he'd do something, small but appropriate, a surprise for his future wife. Harry had in mind a surprise picnic. It would work, in mid-September. Scraping back his chair, then wishing he hadn't scraped it so loudly, Harry crossed over to the sink with his plate and cup. Rather than using a spell to wash it up, he filled the washing up bowl with hot water from the tap, adding a splash of washing up liquid. He was just dropping in the cup and plate when something whooshed past the kitchen window. Harry looked out, noticing that a letter had been deposited, as well as a whitish sticky mess, on the windowsill. Opening the window and reaching out for it, making sure he didn't put his hand in the guano, Harry broke open the seal and read his letter quickly. It was from his mum. Harry smiled. Though being at Grimmauld Place, both his parents seemed to be living there recently, the amount of time they spent at the reciprocator headquarters, Harry didn't have to worry about what to do about tea. 88,888,888. I assure you, my love, all things are in place. You do. You assure me. Gellert Grindelwald moved slowly towards the window of the high tower. Air as fresh as the waters below them, tumbling between granitoid extrusions under a curtain of which he had cleansed his body in the valley below just as the sun was rising. In the chair opposite the bereft fireplace Albus Dumbledore rose. These things can't be rushed. You know your failing is your patience. He wove his way to the wooden table that stretched from wall to wall across the center, stretching the longest width of the oval room, the highest one, through whose windows clouds sometimes idly entered and where winds puffed in, if they were foolish enough. He picked up an object, rather like a magnifying glass lens, larger than his hand, bereft of a handle, and turned the glass in the center, which was suspended on 2 brass pins. Yours is your overconfidence in your abilities. Others attack, others strike. In Britain, where you have not designed, Albus. Grindelwald made his way carefully from the glorious view of the Alpine geology and back to their work. The pieces fall into place, continued Dumbledore. Over-enthusiasm is mere garnish. It adds to the authenticity of our cause. It keeps the ministry busy, too busy to quickly unravel our business before the roots take hold. Before it buds. Grindelwald watched as Dumbledore spun the lens of the portable pensieve again. What a marvelous invention, one which he was so delighted to still be alive to witness. The marvels of the technological age. How he loved his ability to charm, and charms worked the best on those of magical intent. Though Vincento was notoriously difficult to ply, his trust had had to be lubricated with a measure of wealth. But it was never a waste to be that close to the Department of Mysteries, the only such department in the world, where technology was not only born but was conceived, a twinkle in a mysterious eye. How much he had harvested, stolen, bought with bribes, from the combined government's most treasured, and most overlooked, department over the years. But Albus was right. That is why they worked together, both professionally and personally. No, you should not rush. The pieces are falling into place. Their eyes locked. The perfect alliance, the strongest the world had ever seen. Both wizards knew of their influence, rising thousandfold when their endeavors complemented one another exactly. I will keep my patience, my love. Grindelwald pushed down the pensieve onto the table, Albus's hand with it. Eventually Cecilia Lupin will return. Eventually we will gain the insights that we need. The means is in place. Dumbledore looked at the table again. Bright sunlight glinted of the lens of the pensieve. Grindelwald nodded in acknowledgement and placed a hand over that of Dumbledore. The conjurists will be in place. The book will be published and so will the objects. And eventually it will be Walpurgis Night, said Albus Dumbledore. It wasn't a flippant comment, in the way that one might say to someone who is waiting for a thing, soon it'll be Christmas. Yes, my love. We will have him, in the end. 88,888,888. 2 days together, 2 very contented days. Another day when Septimus gone out with his friend Julian again, using the very last of the summer holidays and the glorious weather in the best way they could. Cecilia had played mum quite happily, cleaning the cottage using non-wizard methods, even going so far as cleaning the nets and bedclothes, cooking healthy meals from her limited repertoire, in short, acting as the person she always wanted to be. Yesterday she had visited Remus at St. Mungo's with Septimus, talking to him about general things that had happened and those that were to happen in the near future, and had again revisited both evenings with Cleus's help. The previous evening on the way to the hospital she had spoken to Cleus, who talked to her about staying in the cottage for the time being, until Septimus had gone to Hedgewoods and Cecilia had agreed that it would be for the best. And then, back to Edgeford, to Dalton Drive, and her old life. Though the situation seemed reasonable, favorable to Cecilia even, she couldn't help feeling on edge. She knew Cleus Lupin was highly practiced in the art of diplomacy. He knew the right way of delivering information that made her feel reassured, like a verbal opiate, but Cecilia's brain had enough experience of her brother-in-law to know in her head to be cautious. Which is why she was spending her time cleaning, taking the trouble even to wipe the lines of dust off the pictures which ascended the stairs. It took her mind off the guessing and double-guessing about Cleus's words and manner, something which Cecilia had driven herself mad analyzing in the past. Cleaning was a task which always needed doing, never disagreed that it did need doing, and let her get on with it without protest. Although the picture of the Lupin brothers' grandparents looked as if they might have protested at Cecilia giving their picture a polish if they could. Septimus asked Cecilia if Julian could stop for tea that evening. Cecilia had fish pie and vegetables to offer them, followed by blackberries which both boys had so thoughtfully picked accompanying the ice cream. Julian, a dark-haired lad, with the cheekiest smile she had seen in a child, thanked her, had laughed at the method in which Cecilia stored the ice cream, in a bucket under the sink, and told her about how he was looking forward to going to big school. "He's going to Hedgewoods, Mum," said Septimus as he scraped the remainder of the ice cream from his bowl. "Well, if he's accepted. He still hasn't heard." "I don't really want to go to Penrith," said Julian, "and Mum and Dad did get a letter saying we might not hear until near the end of the summer." Cecilia watched as Septimus shot him a look of pity. "I was looking forward to going shopping to Diagonal together," he replied. "Getting our wands together and robes and stuff." "Well, if I can get an owl like Mervyn it'll be lush," replied Julian, scraping his bowl too before wiping his mouth on his sleeve. Cecilia smiled with happiness, offering the lad a napkin. Her son, and his friend. How had she become the parent of an 11-year-old? Within a decade he'd be left school and grown up. And she would be around to see it, to be a part of it, not pushed out, ignored and overlooked, as Clea seemingly preferred. She pushed out the negative thoughts and focused on what she felt right now, a mixture of pride, that her son had grown into such a boy who brought his friends back and was interested in nature, rather than computer games, and privilege that she was here to witness it. Forcing back emotion, Cecilia grinned as she listened to their conversation. "It's cool you've met the headmaster already," Julian continued. "Was the school cool?" "Yep," nodded Septimus. "It was cool. All castly bits, ups and downs on the top stash." "Crenulations," chipped in Cecilia. "Crenulations," repeated Septimus. "It's all old and stony, big, like an old castle with knights in." "That does sound cool," nodded Julian. "And they have ghosts, and different houses, and paths that you can walk down, great for exploring. And there's a forest." "Double cool!" exclaimed Julian. "Think of what we'll find in there." "You're not exactly supposed to go into the Forbidden Forest," Cecilia chided, looking sternly at Septimus for a moment. She wasn't having them both go wandering off, as they did with utmost safety in the hills and fells around the cottage, into the forest, or anywhere else for that matter. "You'll lose house points for a start, if not a number of limbs." Both boys were staring at her now and her lips curled into a smile and they laughed too. "You'll love it," concluded Cecilia, picking up her bowl. Though she and Septimus did the washing up together of an evening, well, as much as 2 days being a tradition in these things, she then told the lads if Julian was stopping a little longer they could go to Septimus's room. "Mum used to work at Hedgewood's," said Septimus as he rose. Julian however did not get up. "What's he like, Mrs. Lupin?" asked Julian. "The headmaster? Uncle K said to watch out for him," added Septimus, sitting back down. Mid-plate convoy, Cecilia dumped the crockery in the sink and returned to her seat. Both boys were looking to her for comment. "Mum?" Cecilia laughed, thinking about her and Severus's working relationship. "Honestly, I have to say he is the most dependable person I've ever known, in this world, or the last." She looked at Julian, and added, "And don't worry about missing out going to Diagonal. Even if you don't hear before Friday, when we're going, you come with us." "Really?" Julian Scott's face lit up with delight. Septimus was grinning too. Cecilia nodded. Wicked. For there was not a chance in the world that she wouldn't be taking her son, despite Cleus's avoidance of her questions yesterday. "'Cause I went there with Sam, when he went to get his things, years ago." Cecilia began the washing up, the conversation fading, to be replaced with thumps of feet on wooden stairs and a slam of a door as the wind from Septimus's no doubt open window for the convenience of his owl caught it. She remembered that visit too, when they had been close, bonded, when she had a position within the reciprocators, when things were going right for them all. Wiping the dishcloth around the plates before placing them to drain, Cecilia banished the thought from her mind and forced herself to focus in the future. Not the very near future though, when Cleus would take her to see Remus, but the happier future, the future with her son in it, and Cecilia, 2 parts of the Lupin family. As she crossed the kitchen and entered the living room, Cecilia began to rehang the net curtains which were folded neatly in the washing basket behind the door. Of course she trusted Severus Snape. How could she not? For if she didn't, If she couldn't, she might well give up on the third member of their family and condemn her husband to an imperceptibly slow death in a hospital bed a mile under London.